Hello and welcome to the last part of our paper bag bird themed junk journal. If you've missed part 1 and 2, I will link a playlist for you which is linked in the description box below so that you can see how we got to where we are now. So in this episode I'm going to be making some final touches on some of the pages as well as the cover. And finally, we will be binding our pages together, which is super exciting, I think. I know many of you have been curious how I'm going to bind them, as have I, because I have had no idea until I actually sat down and did it. So hopefully you will learn something along the way as well. So for this page with the 2 leaves that I have adhered, I am attaching a very sheer golden piece of tulle, and I'm attaching it by sewing it with a straight stitch with an embroidery needle onto the top of the page and just making a knot at the beginning and at the end. And I know you can barely see it on the video, but believe me, it's there. And it has a very nice golden shimmer in real. It's too bad that you can't really see that. Moving on to this page was very crinkly, as you can probably see, and I found this gorgeous doily with a butterfly in it. This was gifted to me along with a matching bigger doily, and I think it's so adorable that I wanted to attach it to this page. And I'm also using my deco glue for this, but I'm not putting any over the doily, and it holds really well, so that was great. Then I went back to the cover because you see here on the right, this part is quite flimsy and I didn't want it to tear with time with the opening and closing of the cover. So I thought I would add this beautiful piece of lace and add it to a piece of the handle of the original paper bag that I still had. So I'm going to attach that also with the deco glue, but not putting it over the lace itself. And here I tried dyeing one of these green feathers that I had on the right with my Wild Honey Distress stain, and after fluffing it up a little bit, it had this beautiful golden green shimmery color, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. And I wanted to attach that kind of like coming from underneath of this tab, which I am attaching with my 3-in-1 glue because I wanted to make sure that that sticks down really well, and then also just clamping it to make sure it holds up well. On the back inside cover, I wanted to add a sentiment. I am one with the earth, which is from my calligraphy nature sentiments in my shop. I will link those for you below. And I just cut that apart because I didn't want one long strip. And lastly, I'm going to edge that with an orange water-soluble colored pencil. It was completely useless to use the water brush on it because I could have just left it, and I think for the other ones then I will actually just leave them. Then I have another quote here that I wanted to add to this page, which I also cut up, and I am also just edging around the words. Then somehow this didn't film, but I have some longer nature quotes in my shop now as well, and I wanted to add one of these to this page with the printed leaves. And for some more texture, I added some of my hibiscus dyed cheesecloth underneath, just by attaching it with, or by adhering it with my deco glue again, but not going all the way to the edges because I wanted the edges of that what is it called, cheesecloth, to kind of stay fluffy. So in there you can read the beautiful quote. Next, I'm just adding the word breathe to my butterfly sketch. So just as a reminder, I wanted my pages to stay calm. I didn't want to overload them with elements. Adding another one of my longer quotes to this tulip. I'm not reading them to you because on my screen while I'm editing they are so small that I can't actually read them. I can read these bigger ones. This one says breathe in nature. You see this fern is turning a little bit brown, but I'm just ignoring that. This is one of my scraps of paper that I just cut out where I had tested some things just to give that page a little more interest. And adding another quote on this page. I just love how simple they are. And this is the back inside cover, and this will say shine on, which I think is a nice sentiment for the last page, which kind of is like a positive end note, I think, because you're supposed to keep shining. And then I'm adding another longer quote on this digital page from the Digital Collage Club. I also can't read that for you now, so I hope you can read it. And then adding the word dream to this stamp of the tree with the dragonfly. So now that I'm pretty much done decorating all my pages, of course, it's the moment of truth. How are we going to bind these single pages? And you see here it is quite bulky, which I actually like, but I might flatten it before I bind them. I'm not sure yet. So what I really want for this journal is, I know there's a lot of different binding methods for binding single pages. But what I wanted was, I wanted the pages, or I wanted the book to open flat, meaning I didn't want any stitches through here where I would then have to bend the pages and the book wouldn't open completely. I wanted it to be like my Book of Trees book, which is not the binding she does in her tutorial, Roxanne. I will again link her website below with her courses. I did a different binding, and I really like this binding because, as you see, it lays completely flat, and I love that. My worry though with this one was that, of course, the pages here, since we're working with a paper bag, are not as sturdy as the watercolor pages that I have here, which are really stiff and hard. So I was trying to think of a way that I could stiffen them, and not all of them need stiffing, because those that have things glued down to the sides, like this for example, this I've glued all the way almost to the edge, so this is very stiff and sturdy. This is not going to be a problem, but there are a few, like the cover for example, that just are not as sturdy, so I need to do something with them. So I thought, I have some pieces left over from the paper bag that I cut apart, and I thought for those pages that still need a little extra support, I could maybe just wrap around another piece, and then that would make it a lot more sturdy, something like that. So I will attempt to do that. I don't think a lot of pages require that. So I'll put you back on the fast forward, and I'll see you back when that is done.
On this one here, I'm just going to tear this part a little more narrow, and then I don't have to add anything because I have something glued on both sides, which again makes it really sturdy. And this was a really wide one anyway, so that's easy. So this is a step probably worth considering before you come to this to this part of the book. Maybe you want to consider this earlier when you're adding your bits to your papers, so that this won't happen, that you might run into trouble. Most of these actually are really stiff, so it's totally fine. Back one, yep, it's actually fine. Yep. Okay, so I actually only had to do that to the cover and tear one of the pages down. So that was a lot easier than I thought. So now let's do the binding. So this is going to be very easy. Everyone can do this. So it's going to end up looking like this. So that means, I think for this size of journal, I think having 2 and 2 holes works well. If your journal is bigger, then maybe you want to do 3 and 3. You'd have to see. So I just need 1 hole on 4 spots on the page. So I want to be sure that I get those in the same place on each page. I just took a strip of scrap paper and I made it pretty much the same height as my journal. And now I'm going to mark where I want the holes to be. And I'll just take my cover. I think that's the best one to kind of figure out where I want them. And I want them going in. I don't want them right at the edge. So maybe here and here. So, okay, just to give you an idea how far in it is. So it's either almost an inch from the top, and then how much is this? Half an inch down the second one, or in centimeters, about 2.5 centimeters from the top down, and then about another centimeter after that. So I'm going to do the same measurements from the bottom up. So now I know where my 4 holes are going to be, 1, 2, and 1, 2. And again, I don't think this needs to be super exact for this kind of journal. So now what I want to do is to mark those measurements here. And I'll just go like this with my pencil. So now I see the marks here, 1, 2, and I know they're hard to see, but there's 1, 2. Now I just want to make sure that I make the holes in the same distance from my spine so that they line up. I'm going to take this very small hole punch. You can definitely also take an awl. So I just now need to make note of how far in I'm going. Let me tell you. So that is, the middle of the hole is about 7 millimeters in, or a little over 1/4 of an inch. But again, it doesn't have to be exact. You do what you think works best for you. And as you see, I'm not measuring. I'm just kind of eyeballing it so that they line up like this. Now on the bottom here, I might have to go through my lace. So I don't know how well that's gonna work. What kind of helps me here is I have an indent here. I don't know if you can see it on my hole punch, and if I just put the paper up until there, then I know that it's always going to be the same. Oh, this actually went right through it, so that was cool. And one last one. So I have my 2 holes there. So the cover is all set, and I'm going to repeat the same thing for all of my pages. Let's see how to do this with the fabric. Since my pages are not always the same length, I'm always going to just make sure that I center it to my piece of scrap here. So I want to make sure this is right in the center. And for this, I don't know if I can actually punch it. If that doesn't work, I'll just use my awl, but first I have to kind of mark them, which I will then have to erase. Maybe I won't, because I think the twine is probably gonna cover those lines. Okay, let's see if I can actually punch through this, not sure. Oh, I can, how cool is that? Oh, I love that. Okay, so if you have a hole punch, it should be able to punch through. And here I'm measuring, of course, not from where the fringes start, but from where the actual fabric starts without the fringes, so that I line them up. Just snip off the back. There's 2 holes. Yeah, so I'm gonna do that for all the pages and then I'll be back. So when you come to a page like this that has a flap going up, obviously you don't want to punch your holes through the flap. You still want that to be able to go up. So you flip it up and then you punch your holes. Now you're probably going to wonder, what on earth is this? I recently found these amazing clamps on Amazon. I will see if I can link something similar for you in the Amazon.com as well. These are really, really heavy-duty clamps. They are from the brand Wolfcraft, but they have them from many different brands. And the cool thing about these is that they have these flexible ends here, so they will adapt to whatever you're clamping them to, which is really cool. And they are super strong. It takes me a lot of strength to open them. So I've had this on my little book here for maybe half an hour, and you will see the difference that it made to the bulk. So this is what we have now. Maybe you still remember what it was like before. So if you want it more flat, you could, or maybe you have some clamps, but if you don't, then you can also just set down some really heavy books on your book and maybe leave it overnight in that case. So now for the binding, I know you're so curious how this is going to work, as am I. The method I'm using is called the slip knot binding, and you're supposed to use, well, you can use whatever you want. You can use twine, like for example, I'm going to use this off-white twine that I have here. You could use embroidery floss, you could use wax thread, anything you have on hand really. And we're going to need 4 strands because we have 4 holes. So we need 1 for each hole. And what I've heard for the length that we need is that we're supposed to have 3 inches for each page in our book. So I need to count the pages and then I will know how many inches of thread I will need. I counted 16 pages. That includes my fabric pages. I did take 1 page out. I don't know where it is now, way at the beginning, because I didn't like it. It was kind of wonky and strange. So I did take that one out. So I have 16 left. So 16 times 3 is 48. So I need 4 times 48 inches of this twine. So I'm going to cut that and then I'll be back. And by the way, this would be the time that if you have any of these pages where you have the flap going up, you need to have that up so that you don't sew through it once we put the thread in. So make sure those are all folded up. Okay, I have my 4 strands here, so I'm going to take 1. And actually I added another 2 inches, so each of mine is 50 inches long now. And I know it seems very long, but I don't want to run out of thread after all the work I put in, so I'd rather have them longer than shorter. So I have my book now all stacked up the way it's supposed to be, and then I'm just gonna move all the pages back except the last page. So we're starting from the back and then moving up to the front. So I'm going to fold my twine in half. And then I'm going to take the loop and put it through the first hole. Like this. So I have my loop here. And then I'm going to take the top part and I'm just going to slip that through the loop. Like this. So that's going through the loop. And now I just slip the knot towards the page. So now I have this here. And I'm not pulling tightly, I'm leaving it loose. So I'm going to do that with all 4. So again, I'm going to fold the new twine in half, and I'm taking the loop and I'm putting it in my second hole. Then I'm opening the loop, putting the top 2 threads through it, and just pulling that. So I'm going to do that for the other 2 as well. Once we have 4 in place, we're going to take our next page. So the second last from the bottom, or I mean from the bottom of our pile now, it was the second to last in our book. And we're going to take the first string or twine. And if they're not the same length at this point, I think it helps to make them even. Like that. And we're going to take these, put them in the top hole, both of them. Pull. And then you have these 2 strings and you just separate them and pull the thread through from the bottom. So that looks like this. Just like that. I'll show you again. We have our twine. Gonna even those out. Stick them from the top through the hole. Now we come in between the 2 pages. We're coming out on the bottom. We pull it, but before we pull it all the way closed, we separate these 2 and pull the twine through the 2, and then just gently pull it closed. So now we have this on the top 2, and we do the same for the bottom 2. Okay, so now we have all 4 done. Don't worry about pulling them too hard. Please don't, because you might rip through your pages. But now you can already see that this is going to open flat. And I just love that. So we're going to keep going, doing exactly the same thing until we have all the pages done. So I'm taking the next page, which is the one most on the bottom of my pile, and I'm going to lay it on top, and then I'm going to start again from the top and do the same thing we just did. Now your ends will probably meet up. You won't have to cut anything, and you just keep going and do this for all of your pages. And I won't bore you looking at, watching me do that. But it's just, it's the same thing. And don't worry about if it's tight or not. We can still adjust that at the very end. But basically, this is now what I have. This is 3, and we're just gonna continue like this. I'm now coming to my first fabric page, and let's just do this together so that you can see if this works. I've never done this with a fabric page, so let's see how that goes. So I'm doing the same thing. Of course, this here on the end is going to bunch up, but I think that's totally fine. I hope that's going to be totally fine. I've never seen anyone do this kind of stitch with fabric. So let's see. Yeah, seems to work. I mean, don't pull super hard. I think that's very important when you bind either fabrics or papers that are not super strong. Of course, if you have like, when you have some thick cardboard or something, or boards, then of course you don't have to worry about this. Or even just a thick watercolor paper, those work really well. But with these, you really need to be careful because we're working with much more delicate materials. So as you can see here, it does bunch up here, but it's okay, and it will make the hole a little bit bigger, so just be aware of that. If it bothers you, then maybe don't use fabric like this. Then just add the fabric by gluing it to your pages, and that way you won't have this problem. Obviously, I wasn't thinking about this kind of binding when I was putting my book together. So these are the things that happen when you don't think a project through to the end, but that's okay. I learn as I go, and it will be fine in the end, I'm sure. This is going to obviously take you a while to bind all your pages, depending on how thick your book is or how many pages you've added, but it's a nice meditative thing to do, I think. Okay, so hoping that this won't tear, I will just now continue with my next page, which is actually one of these that has the flap. So I'm just gonna leave that there on the one side and just continue as normal. You obviously don't want your twine too thick, otherwise you won't be able to get it through the holes unless you make bigger holes from the beginning. That is of course also an option. Just be aware that you need 2 strands to go in your hole, not just one. One more tip, it helps to keep the strands really straight, so not all twisted up like this, because otherwise you're gonna have a problem when you pull it closed. It's not gonna look nice. So keep them as parallel and straight as you can as you're pulling them through the holes. It will just make the end result look not a lot neater. When you're at the end of the hole of each page, just kind of gently pull on all 4, not too much, just a little bit. So I think I'm about halfway through. So this is what the side looks, whoops, this is what the side looks like right now. So we're getting this little braid here. And then you can put your flaps down once you've stitched it and continue with your next page. So it's time to add my cover now, and I'm going to do the exact same thing as I've done before, and we're just going to end it a little bit differently. So we do the same thing. It took me now maybe about half an hour to get all of these bound, the pages. And I think what takes the longest is to keep your thread straight, to keep the strands parallel without twisting them too much. But I'm glad I took the length of thread that I did. I don't think I maybe wouldn't have needed to add the 2 inches, but this is all I have left, so it's not a huge amount. But I think if you go with 3 inches per page, that will be fine. And when I was watching this, I didn't get it until I did it myself. Then it was logical and then I understood how to do it. But just watching it, it might seem a bit confusing, or at least I was when I watched it. I think this is definitely my favorite way of binding sturdy single pages. I think it's a lot of fun and I love the way it looks in the end. Okay, I'm at my last hole here. So now it's still kind of loose. So when we turn this here, we can see, let me just flip those. Yeah, so we can see it is very loose, but we're going to tighten it now. And I think it's easier to do that after the fact that we've pulled them through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my awl. You take anything long and thin, maybe maybe a wooden skewer or something like that, whatever you have. And I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm just going to pull, not too much again, because I don't want to tear my pages. And then I'm going to put that next to each other, and I'm just going to keep pulling the threads until they tighten up a little bit with each, in between each page. Just going to go through the twine and pull that. I'm going to do that for all 4, and then it'll be a lot closer together. The pages, I mean. You see, you can just pull it, and then you see you have this big gap here. So you just keep doing that until you're at the top. A little bit harder with the fabric pieces. So the farther up we get, the bigger the gap of the thread becomes. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going with all 4 of these, and then I'll be back so that we can finish off the top. Actually, before I tighten the other 3, I'm going to finish the first one off just so it doesn't get loose again while I'm working on the other ones. So there's many different ways of finishing it off, but what I'm going to do is something very simple. So I'm going to separate these 2 strands. I'm going to put one of them in, just pull that into the inside of the first page. Do the same thing with the other side, but here I have to just go through the gap of the 2 holes. Just put it in between the 2 so that it comes out on the second page. So now I have both on the inside. Just gonna make sure that it didn't loosen up again. And then I'm simply going to make a double knot. And you could also do a little bow, but I want to keep it simple and just do a double knot. And then I'm going to snip off the ends. That. So the first one is done, and on the outside it looks pretty because we don't see that there's a knot or anything. We won't see it until the inside, and I don't think it really disturbs on the inside. So we'll do the same thing for the other 3. I'm done tightening everything, and this is what it looks like now. What I do love about this binding is that it makes your book stay flat. So here you see it's flat. I'm not even really holding it together, and I really like that. But I do want to give it a little more stability because you see here it still is quite flexible. It will be fine, it won't come apart, but I do want to just add a little bit more stability, and so I tore these 2 pieces of fabric, and I'm going to glue those around my spine. It is going to cover this, but that's okay because it's not so perfect anyway, which is fine because I'm not going for perfection in this journal. And I'm going to just glue the fabric on the front and on the back and not in the middle here because I do want this to stay completely flexible. And I've decided I'm going to use my tacky glue for this because I know if I use my 3-in-1 glue, it will bleed through the fabric, or I think it will, and that is going to upset me. So tacky glue it is. If you have Fabri-Tex or whatever it's called, obviously that would be a really good choice. I don't have any. So let me first do the front. I think this will hold well enough because there's not going to be any pull on this fabric, so I think it's fine. Let's just flip it over. Okay, so this is what the spine looks like now, and the front, and it's still flat. So let's see what it looks like if we flip through it now. And the fabric works just fine. And you see the pages are flat. Every page. That's why I really love this binding. I decided the cover needed one final touch. I, by coincidence now, found this here in my stash. This was from Action. And I'm really loving this beautiful butterfly. So I want to see, even though there's a dragonfly here, I maybe should put a dragonfly on it. Let me try both options. So I have this butterfly and it is pretty dimensional, which is why I think the best option is to put it on the cover, while this dragonfly is flat. So this I could even put maybe somewhere inside if I really want to have a dragonfly. So this, I mean, oh yeah, this would be really cute right here actually. I love that. Okay, let's see what the butterfly would be like. That's also really cute. No, it would be this way. Oh no, now I don't know what to choose. This is awesome up there. So is this, but this one I would like more here. Both is a bit much. Although we do have a triangle here with the bronze. I don't know what to do. No, 2 is definitely too much. I do really love this dragonfly here. But I also really love the butterfly up there. Okay, let me see if I can find a page to add the dragonfly so that I can have both. Could say hello to the butterfly. That would work. Nope. Maybe here to give some more interest. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna use my 3-in-1 glue. Okay, that's kind of squishing out now. And I can't close it now. Okay, I will have to let this dry before I do anything else. I should have done the cover first. Okay, it's a few minutes later and I think it's dry enough that I can turn the page. So let's go back to the cover. Yeah, that butterfly really needs to go there. So that's the final cover. There's our spine. There's our back. If you want, you could add a closure, wrap something around it. I love having a tab here to open it. Okay, one more thing I have to add because I really love the way it looks here on this cover. It's this piece of wood here that I attached. So I just want to show you how I did that because I think it would look really nice on this one as well. So what I have here is a collection of some things that I have been collecting a while ago on my walks with my BFF and her dog. So I have here some pebbles, and I've washed all of these. I've also washed this wood that I collected because I never know what's on it. So I have here different sizes of twigs and even a piece of wood and some more pebbles. And I think I have this one here that has the perfect size for our journal. So I could just attach it here like this, and or maybe like this. See, on this one, the fabric that I have here is a bit more sturdy than the fabric I have here, so I hope it will still be okay because it is only glued here and here on the fabric. So I'm hoping that would be okay if we do it on this one. It should be okay. And for that, I think I will use my heat gun just to be sure. But I do want to also wrap around some fabric here because I think it looks really nice. And I actually think I'm going to use the same bright yellow, which is my cheesecloth dyed with turmeric, because I think that yellow is a nice pop of color here. So I'm going to just wrap this around the middle part. Ideally this ends on the inside, yep, and it does. And I'm just going to use my tacky glue again to glue that end down. Like that. And then if you wanted to, like I did here, I just wrapped some wire, some gold wire around it too. I'm not going to do that for this one because I don't think it doesn't really go with what else I have going on. And I have brass here, so I don't think that would work well. But, oh, I think this is really nice. Yeah, so I'm going to get out my heat gun and heat that up. Okay, my heat gun is hot, so I'm just going to add some here. Good amount. And here, this is where I'm worried that it might not stick as well. Just try. Maybe add some more here. And let's put it down. Oh yeah, it's holding really well. Oh, this is so cool. Yep. So there we are. I really think this adds, of course, to the nature look. And it doesn't hinder the opening of the pages. How fun is that? Love it, love it, love it. So if you give this a try, please tag me on Instagram if you post it there. I would love to see what you come up with. Of course, there's so many different styles in which you can make your paper bag journal. I love the nature theme. I hope you give it a try. I loved this project so much. I hope you will as well. And I hope to see you back here in my next video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Love you guys.
Mwah. Mwah.